And Mrs. Pfefferman. Yeah, I'm going to invite her up a little later. And thank you very much for giving me an honorary doctorate, because I'm actually not Dr. Pfefferman, but I'm glad to receive the honor. So, I used to use a Mac, but now I've learned again. I wanted to use that Hundoke from Father. It was so serious, and I remember how serious he was sometimes in those days. I mean, he could be charming and he could embrace us with his love, but when he got serious, he was deadly serious, and if you were tuned into him, you couldn't help but feel that kind of life and death commitment. You must possess the conviction that when you strike the earth, it will split. Ew. But sometimes I did feel like that. And sometimes we would go out and we felt like we can go through anything, even at the cost of our lives. And, you know, some people really did lose their lives in those days and during that campaign. So why was Father so serious? I want to just take a minute and go back to the providential background of this God Bless America campaign that we're now celebrating 40 years after the fact. Originally, Father planned to work his providence, or God's providence, in Korea with Korean Christians. But they didn't accept his message. They rejected him. They went to the police in North Korea and South Korea, pushed him to jail, to the concentration camp, and he had to go such a terrible course of suffering, and the Korean Christianity never really united with him. And so that is the reason he came to America much later than he had originally hoped to. And when he came, he felt that he had to restore on the international level, centering on the Christian nation of America, what was not accomplished with the Korean Christians in his home country. And when he came to America in 71, he immediately launched the Day of Hope campaign. I guess that was in 72. And that was actually quite successful. Everywhere he went, there were full halls. The mayors of many cities gave him the key to the city before he gave his speech. And there were proclamations from many states, from the governors, saying, this is the day of hope in our state. And lots of senators and congressmen posed for pictures with him. See, there was not much persecution yet back in those days. And at the same time, a lot of members were joining. In 1970 through 74, I figured out that we basically doubled in size every year, from 500 to 1,000 to 2,000 to 4,000 in those 4 years. Can you imagine if we had kept up that rate of growth for 40 years? I don't know, I think the whole nation would have joined, but you can't sustain that level of growth. But something happened that really, we hit the wall around after 1974, and there were a number of reasons for it. But one reason I want to mention today is that Father consciously sacrificed our movement for the sake of the world. And one big way was through the Forgive, Love, Unite campaign. Let me go back. The campaign where Father asked us to lead the nation in embracing and forgiving President Richard Nixon, even though we all knew he had done something pretty wrong. But Father felt it was important for the nation to forgive Nixon for the sake of the world, because without American leadership centering on Nixon, communism was going to take over Southeast Asia. And it could take over South Korea as well. And the Soviet Union at that time was really near the height of its power. And Nixon was the one holding the line against them. So when he finally was able to meet with Nixon, he told him that. He said, you have to keep fighting, you have to stay in the presidency, and you cannot withdraw from Vietnam. But Nixon went the other way. He withdrew from Vietnam, he resigned the presidency, and within a year, Vietnam had fallen. And I remember the heart-sinking feeling I had because I was in charge of the VOC work, the work against communism in America at that time. And to see our nation pulling out, to see the people I had met in South Korea and Cambodia facing possible extermination, to see all the investment of the many lives that the United States had lost in that struggle, it was a very sad time. And Father felt that if America did not revive, God's blessing would be withdrawn from America. So he said, we have to do this God Bless America campaign to mark the 200th birthday of the American nation. And he said, the president himself should have done this. If Nixon had stayed in office, then the president himself would do this. But because he had withdrawn, he had resigned, and because his successor, President Ford, was so politically wounded, they couldn't lead the nation towards that revival. So Father asked our church to do it. So as I said, this campaign should have been led by the President of the United States. And Father consciously sacrificed the development of our church for the sake of the world in this campaign. He told us so directly. So he mobilized people from all over the country to come to New York to organize Yankee Stadium. He organized extra fundraising so that we had all kinds of people out there working harder than they ever had before doing the fundraising campaigns. People lost their lives doing that. They lost their lives in New York City. They lost their lives in the mission field. Because right around that time, just the year before, Father sent the missionaries out to, how many countries was it? Was it 120 or 180 countries back then? 120 nations. And they faced terrible suffering, persecution, disease, violence, and some of them lost their lives too. So it was a really, really life and death circumstance. Members came from all over the world to the United States. A lot of people came from Japan and Europe to help us. And we worked day and night to organize the Yankee Stadium campaign. So let me see, how many people were there? There were more in the early service. But you remember how enthusiastic and how excited we were that we were finally going to do it. With anticipation, we knew we had done it 2 years before in Madison Square Garden, so we had confidence we could do it again in Yankee Stadium. But we also knew that this time there was a lot of opposition because there was all kinds of negative articles about Father. Ever since he started forgiving Nixon, then the left wing wasn't ready to forgive Nixon. The young people were not ready to forgive Nixon. The communists were not ready to forgive Nixon. They were out in front of the rally, demonstrating against it. So gradually we, opened the stadium. We went in. It was beautifully decorated. There were these huge letters in the outfield saying, "God bless America." The whole left field said that. And there was beautiful red, white, and blue bunting in the bleachers. It was ready for a big party. But then the skies grew dark. The winds began to blow. The lightning began to write its mysterious language on the black bosom of the clouds. And I was like one of those disciples on the Sea of Galilee with Jesus saying, "Are we going to perish? Is this going to be rained out?" I really felt like it was going to be rained out because then all hell broke loose. It was literally like a hurricane. You saw the video a couple of weeks ago. Most of you saw the video a couple of weeks ago where the wind was literally swirling. It was a little hurricane or tornado in the middle of left field. And that's what happened to our beautiful decorations. Somebody told me just today that the weather report said there were hurricane force winds inside the Yankee Stadium that day. So literally there were 100-mile-an-hour winds. And I was in the press box. That was my responsibility that day. So I didn't get rained on. And I also didn't have the experience of standing in the rain singing what? You are my sunshine. Some of you did. And those who did really, really experience God's miraculous blessing, because somehow the sun did come out and the rains were chased away. There's Mr. Sudo looking. Is he looking at the sun peeking through, or is he still looking at the rain? But that lady there, she's looking at the sun coming out. There were black skies in back, but the sun was actually coming out at that point. And she was up, I think I could read her lips. She said, "It's a miracle." Because a lot of people felt that. A lot of people felt that. I was amazed because I did not share, I didn't do that singing. I just felt, oh my God, it's rained out. That's what I felt. But the rains did stop. People started sweeping the water off the stage and getting the water out of the microphones. And finally, Father came to the stage, and I was so proud of him that day. And he talked about God's hope for America. He introduced the concept of Godism as an ideology that could revive the American spirit. He talked about the 3 stages of the American Revolution. The revolution itself, which was to establish freedom from Great Britain, and also to establish a nation founded on religious freedom as a core bedrock principle. And the second stage was the Civil War, which was like a sacrifice, where the offering of America was divided and blood was shed in order to indemnify the sin of slavery. And then the third stage was to heal the nation and to make real unity of black and white, yellow. I remember I'll always remember the phrase, "In the sight of God, there is no black, there is no white, there is no yellow." Yeah. And then Dr. Pak saying this. Who's got a microphone? It's too small for me to read. Susan, can you?
The rest of the world will follow America's example and will build the kingdom of God upon their respective lands. Then we shall all truly become brothers and sisters under one Father, God. This will be a world of love, a world of happiness. Our planet will be one home, and mankind will be one family. God's will, his long-cherished desire from the beginning of time, will finally be fulfilled. This will be the eternal, ideal world of God. Indeed, it will be the kingdom of God on earth. We will build it with our hands.
We will build it with our hands. And I got goose flesh. I still get goose flesh seeing that speech. And he also talked about the need for the United States to lead the world in the struggle against communism, because that really was the moment where America's leadership in the world had sunk to its lowest level. We had lost in Vietnam, and the Soviet Union was on the march. And he was saying, no, we have to keep that fight. We have to lead the world into freedom. We have to overcome communism. And we succeeded. The stands were pretty full. They were not quite capacity, but they were pretty full. So it was a victory, but it was a half victory. And we found out later that there had been a death threat against Father that night, and it was a serious death threat. They found a guy with a gun in the stadium. So it really was a life and death situation, and of course it really was like, if that had been rained out, it would have been like death. It would have been the crucifixion. And Father talked about it later. He said, that moment in Yankee Stadium was the moment was my moment of crucifixion. That was the time when it turned dark and the rains came. And he said, God nailed me down, but you, the disciples, never ran away. I remember when Father said that to us. We did it. We restored the failure of Jesus' disciples. A miracle came, and God answered your prayer. At Yankee Stadium, we tasted crucifixion, we tasted the 3 dark hours, and we truly tasted the resurrection and the joy of life. We won the victory of Yankee Stadium, yet something was lodged in your heart. There was some emptiness since we could not bring a full house for God. And that really was how we felt. We stayed faithful. We drove the rain away, whether you actually believe that was physically what we did or not. We felt like we did. And most of all, we showed faith. And Father said, he was really impressed with our members. You failed, you succeeded where the disciples of Jesus failed. And God blessed you for it. But it wasn't a complete victory, so we had to go on to the Washington Monument, and we did. And that was another exciting campaign. Again, I was much more involved in it in this case, because in the first one I was doing the anti-communist work in DC while the members were in New York, but this time I was on the front line. I got arrested. I was leading a rally with the Go World Brass Band, and David Eaton was leading the band, and a cop came and ordered us to stop. And I said, well, look, we're playing God Bless America. We can't stop in the middle of God Bless America. No, it wasn't God Bless America the Beautiful. And so the cop said, no, you have to stop. And I said, well, just wait until the song's over. So then he went to David, and he ordered David to stop. And David said, well, you have to talk to the boss, So he came back to me and he ordered me to stop right now. I said, look, we're in the last verse. You have 30 seconds more. And he said, no, you stop right now. I said, he arrested me, put the cuffs on me. And he didn't Mirandize me either. He should have Mirandized me. Anyway, I spent the afternoon in jail, and I'm proud of it. Sorry, but I am proud of it. Thank you. I always wanted to I used to be in the civil rights movement when I was in high school, and I used to go on sit-ins, and I always wanted to get arrested. So finally I got arrested for a good purpose. So. And the very next day, Father, proclaimed a great victory, absolute victory. There was no caveats. But he also said, okay, from today we start the march to Moscow. Because we have to not just revive America, we have to save the world from communism. So we started that campaign that day. And a lot has happened since then, but I also want to bring you to what was going on in the world at that time. So I'm going to bring Susan up, since she was not in America. She was in Iran, and she's going to give her perspective on those days. Oh, there's a picture of Washington Monument. Okay.
So I wasn't there. I didn't get rained down. I didn't get to shout, "You are my sunshine," at the top of my voice. In fact, I had to be very quiet because I was underground in the Middle East. I also didn't get to attend the Washington Monument with that ocean of people. And the English newspaper in Tehran, the capital, they knew I was there because they had interviewed me. There'd been this big article about Father, and then I talked to them and they said, special representative from Reverend Moon is in Tehran. Wasn't a good idea, but anyhow, I didn't get arrested. I got thrown out of the country. But we were connected to Yankee Stadium and Washington Monument. Our members and I prayed desperately. And we were connected and looked in the newspapers, and they always put in a little blurb because they knew I was there. And on the day of Yankee Stadium, the boy on the far right? Yeah. He was riding his motorcycle or scooter in town, and he was struck from behind. He went flying through the air after his face hit the handlebars, and the doctor who later wired his jaw shut saw him flying through the air from the second floor. And for 40 days, this young man had his mouth wired shut, and he just could drink through a straw. Our German sister joined him in a liquid fast for 40 days to support him, because this was a near-death experience. And we understood, those of us who were older, that this was indemnity for Father's victory, for Mother's victory, and we had to do our best. And when they did Washington Monument, they put a little blurb in the English paper, and they said 30,000 came. And I read it, and I said to our members, "It's a lie. I know it's a lie." And they looked at me. "Ooh, she's so bold." And it was a lie, wasn't it? Yeah. It's because those silly park police didn't want to count the people. And, nobody wanted Reverend Moon to succeed, but he did. And we succeeded in Iran as well. The woman next to me, I was not so healthy, is the mother of 6 or 8 of our members at that time, and she was my best friend. And when she and I got together, we got everything done. And her house in the mountains became our workshop site. And she would complain if I didn't bring members every weekend for a workshop. But I said, "Maman, just once a month, please." She couldn't read, she couldn't write, she couldn't even tell time. Her husband was 25 years older than her and a bully, but she trusted me, and she did everything she could for me and encouraged me so much. And by the end of my time in Iran, her husband said in Farsi that he loved me more than he loved his own children. And True Father had told me that would be a victory, when the people love you more than their own kids. And I just thought, woo. Yeah. And there I'm rowing a boat with our German sister and a Japanese brother from Iraq, I think. We were in Turkey in exile for a while. And we're rowing across the Bosphorus, which you can't do today because there's so much traffic. And you see the minaret on the right side and the stray cat. And then we did a tour of Iran, and I'm cooking in the desert. Yeah. It was a difficult time, and for women, especially difficult, but Americans always hold their head up, even when it's difficult. And there in 1977 are some of my members. Aren't they handsome? And that's the daughter of Maman, and she said, "I give you my daughter, because you can raise her better than me." She lives up near Barrytown with her Italian husband, Malihe. So when I left in 79, we had 40 members. And they're strewn all across the world. I didn't do anything. I just hung on to God and did what true parents asked me to do. Thank you.
Stay up here. I just wanted to mention a very happy experience for me was that time when I came around to see the Washington Monument. I rounded this building, the corner of the building, and the monument grounds came into sight, and it was already more than half full. With it really was. If it wasn't 300,000, it was lots of people. I don't know exactly how many, but it was a huge, huge volume of people, and the buses were unloaded, and the people were swarming, and frisbees were flying, and dogs were chasing, and people were having picnics, and kids were running around. And you know the song we sang at the beginning of church today, The Day of Hope? That song. And not to brag, but I felt that song had been fulfilled on that day. All of the children come running. Lord, what a wonderful sight. That's what I really felt on that day. So it was like a miracle. And since then, you know, Father made a lot of predictions that communism would fall, that there'd be a half-black president of the United States. You know, and at Washington Monument, he predicted that the U.S. and Korea and Israel should work together at the United Nations. Well, today the Secretary General of the United Nations is a Korean. The Berlin Wall fell. Who would have believed it when Father predicted that in the early 90s? He said, the communism will fall. Nobody believed it. I didn't believe it. Again, I'm doubting Thomas. I didn't believe it, but it happened. And the Soviet Empire collapsed. So when we look back, we can see that Father really was a prophet, and also that the things we did in those days, the sacrifices we made a difference. Again, just like you don't know whether we actually drove the rain away or we just contributed spiritually to the victory, the same with the fall of communism. We did something. Whether it was in a small way or whether we actually were the catalyst together with True Father to make communism fall. It fell, and we were involved, and we were putting our hearts into that struggle. So yes, we can claim that victory. And today we're facing many challenges. In the external world, there's no consensus on moral values in the United States anymore. The nuclear family is actually collapsed. We used to predict that it would collapse. Now it has collapsed. It's no longer the standard. Even in law, it's no longer the standard. The rise of radical Islam is another external challenge that we face in the world today. The lack of American leadership has gotten, again, to be a serious problem after the Soviet Union collapsed. There are new threats from Russia, China, and North Korea, especially when you consider nuclear proliferation, which is also spreading to the Middle East. So there are serious external problems, and there are also serious internal problems within our church. We have a schism in our church, in case you didn't know, here in Clifton, New Jersey. But I think you probably do. There's confusion in the wake of True Father's passing. The church hasn't grown substantially, at least not in our country, for 30 years. And there's been inadequate retention of our next generation. So these are dark times in a certain way. You know, we still have our community, and you have a healthy community here, so you can support one another, but these are challenging times. This is like the time at Yankee Stadium when the rains came and the winds blew and the sky turned dark. So we have to have faith, and we have to unite with our true parents, and especially with True Mother, who is our True Father's representative on earth today. We have to rededicate ourselves to the ideal. Even if it's not working in our own family, we have to rededicate ourselves to the ideal. We have to recommit ourselves to sacrifice. You know? That doesn't mean, running out, maybe for the not STF, but what are you guys called? GPA. I keep on making that mistake. The GPA people, they're running out and fundraising in dangerous situations sometimes. But we may not have to make those kind of sacrifices like we made 30, 40 years ago. But we should still sacrifice, whether it's a couple of more hours of volunteer work, whether it's a couple of more bills in the offering basket, or however you make your offering. We have to commit ourselves to making sacrifices. And really, by doing that, that's how we participate in the providence. That's how we feel that we are together with God, making a really, truly meaningful effort towards restoring the world. So in that way, we can renew our faith and renew our communities. So in lieu of a prayer at the close of my sermon, I'm going to ask you to... What? Oh, what? Oh, you say it.
True Mother said 4 years of hope.
Until
Yeah, we
2020?
don't have to be depressed or sad. We have hope. We just go.
And she also said, forgive, love, unite, just like Father said in the Nixon times. So
Each other.
please stand, each other, yeah. Please stand and join me, instead of praying, singing, You Are My Sunshine. You are, and say Lord instead of dear. You'll never know, Lord, how much I love you. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, Lord, how much I love you. Please don't take our sunshine. Second verse, same as the first. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You'll never be happy, the skies are gray. You'll never know, Lord, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine. One more time. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, Lord, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. And remember, Father said we will build the kingdom of heaven with our hands.